to Edmonton River Valley Conservation Coalition's Night Out on the North Saskatchewan. This is our 6th annual of these events, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Christine Kowalchuk, and I'm the chair of the Edmonton River Valley Conservation Coalition, and I'll be hosting the event tonight. I would like to begin by acknowledging this beautiful land on which we live and all the other beings with whom we share this place as home. I would also like to acknowledge the First Peoples who have cultivated relationships of respect and reciprocity here over millennia. This includes the Nehewak, Niitsitapi, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Anishinaabe, Saulteaux, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I would like to acknowledge the great wisdom, generosity, and creativity of these peoples, as well as their resistance in the face of ongoing genocide in Edmonton and across Turtle Island today. Those of us who are non-Indigenous and care about the land need to understand how colonial thinking continues to harm this land and its First Peoples, and we need to work harder to listen to and learn from them. Most of us also need to better inform ourselves on the treaties to which we are all bound and are all beneficiaries. The RVCC understands that much change is needed to achieve justice and the health and well-being of all people and all our relatives. We're all connected literally by the North Saskatchewan River, or Saskatchewani CP. The water from this river runs through all of us. We're each 60% North Saskatchewan River water. This water also runs through the birch trees, the beaver, the sturgeon, the squirrels, and the chickadees. It connects us all. Since our founding in 2017, ERVCC has been working to honor the river and all the life it connects here through political advocacy, through events like River Valley cleanups, and through knowledge sharing like events we're holding tonight, so that more and more people understand just how special this place is and will stand up to ensure its proper care. Last year, we also started the ERVCC River Valley Fund, an endowment fund in partnership with the Edmonton and Area Land Trust through the Edmonton Community Foundation. And we'll put the link into the chat for that if you would like more information on that endowment fund. Conservation of the River Valley is deeply needed. While the City of Edmonton claims it cares about the River Valley for its ecological and cultural value, the reality is there is a continuing trend of River Valley loss and degradation. One of ERVCC's member organizations, CPAWS Northern Alberta, found that between the year 2000 and 2015, Edmonton lost approximately 75 acres of River Valley land each year. Since 2015, the losses have continued. The Valley Line LRT and the E.L. Smith Solar Farm alone meant the loss of approximately another 175 acres. Furthermore, Edmonton has allowed infrastructure projects and uses that obstruct or pinch the wildlife corridor and degrade habitat and that disturb important cultural sites. More such projects are planned, including major residential and commercial development in Rossdale. We need a major change in thinking regarding the River Valley in this city. Perhaps a national urban park with Indigenous-led conservation might finally enable that change. The National Urban Park Program has 3 main objectives: conserving nature, connecting people with nature, and advancing reconciliation. One aspect of River Valley protection that needs far more attention is the dark night sky, which, like the river, connects us all. Light pollution is not often covered in the media, and it's not top of mind for many of us living in cities, perhaps because we don't know about its dangers, or perhaps because we just don't know what we're missing. But it's causing great harm to wildlife and has negative health and cultural impacts for humans. One example of ecological harm is to migrating birds. According to some estimates, more than 300 million birds die annually worldwide because the lights from tall buildings interfere with their migration. It has also been shown that in the glow of city lights, birds sing less. Light pollution also causes a great loss for humans. Globally, the Milky Way in the night sky is now invisible to 80% of the world's population. While many people know that Elk Island National Park is a dark sky preserve, Edmonton's light pollution, which is becoming worse each year, now impacts that preserve. The city seems unaware this is a problem. One of the goals of the Horilac Park redesign, for example, was to increase lighting. We need to reverse that trend, and one place to start could be with prioritizing dark night skies over the River Valley. All 3 of our speakers tonight will talk about dark night skies. First, we will hear from biologist Jeff Holroyd on the beautiful nocturnal creatures, saw-whet owls. Then we will hear from Robert Dick of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada on light pollution and its ecological impacts. And finally, we will hear from Elder Elizabeth Latondra on the importance of dark night skies from an Indigenous perspective. Elder Francis Alexis was not able to join us at the last minute, and I would like to extend deep thanks to Elder Elizabeth for stepping in. As she and I said before the event began, it seems that it was meant to be that she would be speaking tonight. Please type any questions you might have for the speakers during their talks in the chat. And at the end of all three talks, we'll have a question and answer and panel discussion session. Please also note that between the second and third speakers, we'll have a short live auction of native plants, thanks to Rocky Faroe. This is our annual fundraiser, so please bid on those plants. We're also grateful for your donations so that we can cover our basic operations like website hosting. Thank you so much to all of you who've donated already. If you haven't yet donated and would like to do so, you can send an e-transfer to ervccinfo@gmail.com. And now I would like to present our first speaker, Jeff Holroyd. Jeff's interest in birds developed as a teenager in the 1960s, when he was an active volunteer and then chairman of the Long Point Bird Observatory. He earned his MSc and PhD from the University of Toronto for his studies of the foraging strategies and diet of swallows. He retired in 2012 after 36 years with the Canadian Wildlife Service, during which time his research included studies of peregrine falcons and burrowing owls, for which he also chaired their national recovery teams. Among other projects, he has tracked the results of the Edmonton Christmas bird count for 40 years. He's now chair of the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory. Just this past August saw the publication of a book he co-authored entitled Wildlife of the North. His latest research project is tracking northern saw-whet owls from the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory around North America using the MODIS wildlife tracking system. Jeff, over to you.
Great, thank you, Christine. I'll share my screen with a bit of luck. Let's share. Okay, everyone can see that, I hope. I haven't got the full screen though. There we go. Is that okay, Christine?
Yep, that looks great. Thank you.
Great. So thank you for that introduction. So yeah, tonight I'd like to give you just a brief overview of saw-whet owls, maybe a bit less than the organizers hoped about the night sky, although I do mention darkness, and obviously owls are creatures of the dark. But I guess I ended up focusing more on the owls and maybe some of our history in the river valley and where we're going in the future. So the story really of saw-whet owls starts with European invasion of the Edmonton area and the establishment of Fort Edmonton and then the town of Edmonton. And that required a lot of wood. So in fact, as you can see in this picture, an early picture of one of the Fort Edmontons, there are no trees left. We actually cleared the land. We subsequently discovered coal underneath the city, what is now the city, and I found it remarkable that, well, the conversion from wood to coal occurred between 1840 and 1880. So I would surmise from that gave our trees a chance to start to grow back. But remarkably, in those years and through the last coal mine closed in 1974, not that long ago, and there's actually 153 coal mines, and they occupied over 2,000 acres of land in the Edmonton area. And then maybe one side note, I just ran into this. I know there's occasionally sinkholes in Edmonton. Some of those are the result of coal mines. So this one coal mine saw the extraction of 1,000 tons a day in 1919. So Edmonton is riddled with coal mines underneath it. But back to our main story. The good news then is once coal arrived, that obviously wasn't good for our air and the early stages of climate change, but it was good for the river valley. That allowed the trees to grow. So now some of our trees are 100 or 100 plus years. So then where do we go looking for owls? One of the things I hate about Zoom is I try to put jokes in here and I don't know if anybody's laughing or gets it. So where do we go looking for birds? Well, obviously this bird's trying to hide for a good reason. But for saw-whet owls, we have to go looking in large trees. they nest in holes in large trees. So where do we find those? We find those in our river valley. This is White Muck Creek. We could also use Mill Creek and the main river valley, and then some of other ravines that reach into the North Saskatchewan River Valley. And the saw-whets are after large trees with holes in them. So what do we know about who creates those holes and the history of the owls in the area? The really only good data we've got is the Christmas bird count. This obviously focuses on wintering birds, not on breeding birds. But the holes for saw-whet owls are made by big woodpeckers, so flickers and pileated. I'm not going to show you a lot of graphs, but I had to show you this one of the pileated woodpecker. The Christmas bird count started in 1906. So you can see on the left, there were no pileated woodpeckers reported on the Christmas bird count. It wasn't done every year. But in the mid-1950s, they finally turned up on the Edmonton count. There weren't a lot of participants. And this graph, it's a number per 10 party hours. So they only have to see one or two when you don't have a lot of party hours, you only have to see one or two to get a larger value. But if you sweep to the right, you can see starting in the late 1980s, 1990s, we've had a steady increase in the number of pileated woodpeckers reported by the parties of bird watchers that go out on the Christmas bird count. So that's good news for the saw-whet owls, because those woodpeckers nest in holes in large trees, which they then move on the following year. They might use it for 1 or 2 years, and then they move on, and the saw-whets are then able to move in. So saw-whet owls, this is their graph from the Christmas bird count. There were a couple reported in the 1970s, and then starting in 1986, we started going out in the evenings on Christmas bird count day, not Christmas Day, but bird count day, and listening for them. And you can see there's been a steady increase in the number of saw-whets. And so this to me parallels the number of flickers and pileated woodpeckers that are wintering in Edmonton, living in our river valley with its bigger and bigger trees and leaving behind nest holes. Just to clarify though, the number of saw-whets seen on the Christmas bird count has increased by, if we divide by the number of the effort, but the actual number hasn't gone up, it's actually gone down. So it's gone down because we're spending less time looking for them. So this is an artificial graph that isn't corrected for effort, but it does show that in, I believe it was 1994, we saw 26, or saw or heard 26 saw-whets in the Edmonton circle, most of those in the river valley. And I believe at the time that was a North American record. Other people have beaten us. And you can see again, before 1985, they were simply not reported in the river valley at all. So it's taken upwards of 100 years for the river valley and its forests to recover from the logging that occurred upwards of 200 years ago. So how can we, what are we doing that might hurt saw-whet owls? So sticks and stones may make by bones, but please don't throw them at me. So night lights are definitely an impact. We don't know for sure what the problem could be. Saw-whet owls hunt at dusk, and they like to hunt in moonlight, but one of their predators, a great horned owl, also likes to hunt in the moonlight. And although the saw-whet is a predator on mice and chickadees, other small birds, the great horned owl is a predator on small owls, as well as rabbits and other critters. So the saw-whet has the unlikely or unenviable position of being a predator and a prey. So it's hard to say for sure just whether the night lights help the owls or actually make them easier prey for the great horns. And that would be a tough research project to resolve. We do know that owls, as I mentioned, hunt at night, and they have large eyes. They have abundant photoreceptors, lots of rods and cones and ganglion cells. As I mentioned, they hunt in the evenings, and moonlight helps the owls, but also helps larger owls. One of the things we can do is bird-proof our windows. So this window is obviously, might be tempting for an owl to fly into and perch on that tree, but because of the Venetian blinds, the bird's not likely to do that. So if you have windows that are open at night with lights on, owls will fly into them. The Beaverville Bird Observatory had a banded saw-whet owl found dead in Vancouver below the lights of the courthouse there. And it simply thought it could fly through and get into a lit room and killed itself on the window. So that's definitely a problem. You don't want to see this in the morning, a shadow where the dust from an owl or any other bird hit your window and left that dust imprint on your window, a face plant, if you like. So one thing to do there is put feather-friendly dots on. You can also put lines. Putting a couple of decals on doesn't work. So consider going to featherfriendly.com and buying dots. These the little dots go on every 2 inches. The birds see them and they can't get through. They think they can't fly through. It warns them there's a window there. Other lights that are a problem for owls are headlights. So headlights blind owls just like they do you and I as we're driving, and that results in road kills. This great horned owl was lucky. It actually was hit by a truck, broke the grill and landed against the radiator, but the folks were able to extract it, take it to, I believe this one actually went to Wild North. It was in Camrose, and they were able to rehabilitate the owl and release it successfully. But cars kill a lot of birds. That's much harder to mitigate. It's been shown with research that birds can avoid objects in wind tunnels up to about 80 kilometers an hour. And after that, the object's moving too fast. So if you are in an 80 zone, don't speed, and you'll avoid a ticket, and you're less likely to accidentally kill a bird. The other hazard for birds is headlights illuminate the roadside. So imagine you're an owl listening for a mouse on the side of the road. You suddenly get a chance to see the mouse and drop down. If that dropping involves crossing the road, then you're going to get hit and killed. As happened with this, this is actually a bird in Europe. It looks like it's got a Norway rat or something, but it was killed at night on the roadway. Another impact that we have on is photographers. So certainly never use flash near an owl. That's hard on the eyes. It's another source of light pollution, even if it's instantaneous. This was a saw-whet owl that I found at Beaver Hill Bird Observatory. We just put a transmitter on it the night before, and I could hear the transmitter clicking, so I was able to track it down. This is the point where I first saw it, is right where I took this picture just with my cell phone, and fairly quickly it opened its eyes, as you can see there, and I left. I didn't want it to wake up. So I would say if you're seeing photographs of owls where unless they're diurnal species like snowy owls or gray owls, and their eyes are open, they've been disturbed. And if there's enough disturbance, then they will leave the area, which can be problematic. There was a pair of saw-whet owls in White Mud Creek a couple of years ago that were calling and perching close to the trail, and there were too many photographers and bird watchers disturbed the pair, and they left, and the observer who was keeping track of them doesn't know where they went. So try to minimize your impact. And if you have to get a picture like this, do you see the great horned owl? I saw this owl shortly after I saw the saw-whet that I just showed you. And if you don't see it, here's its eyes. So I just noticed this dark patch in the trees and realized it was looking at me, and I didn't go any closer. I just enjoyed it from there, and I enjoy this picture and tease people that that's my best picture of a great horned owl I've ever taken. So another question is what happens in the winter and what happens in the fall and winter. We know I'll start again. We know that they winter in Edmonton, but do they all stay, or are some moving? And if so, where do they go? So we monitor the saw-whet owls at the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory on the south end of Beaver Hill Lake. That's our new building. If you haven't been there, please come and visit after May 1st when we'll reopen for the season. We do standardized mist netting. We've been doing it for 20 years now. We play a male call next to mist nets, and we catch between 100 and 500 owls a season. We caught 294 this fall in September, October. You can see here a graph of numbers. It varies widely. 2015, 2016, there's a huge migration of over 500 owls that we caught. We're also able to draw lots of graphs and lots of data. The peak of the migration is about October 8th, but there are still some migrating or moving around at this time of year in early November. We've also been able to find that the migration timing is later now by 4 days. It was found, the same trend was found in Eastern North America, And this is likely because of the warmer falls, as you know, what we're getting right now. But we need, but the question then is, where are they going? So it's autumn, everything's nice and hunky-dory. And as those of you in the Edmonton area know, it can change instantly and go cold. So is that a problem for the owls, the switching of seasons so rapidly? We don't really know. We do know lots of them move. So where do they go? In 2021, we caught one from South Dakota. We had one of our banded owls retrapped in Saskatchewan, and another one remarkably went 3,000 kilometers in 17 days to Pennsylvania. So if they want to leave, they can move very rapidly and clear out. And this map of banding recoveries by Lisa and Chuck Priestley and others shows, it's a bit hard to see, but hopefully you can see it. The bulk of the birds that these are band recoveries moved southeast towards the Great Lakes in eastern North America. A couple from Lesser Slave Lake went south to Montana, and one from Saskatchewan went all the way across to Vancouver Island. So the maps all over the place, but the bulk of them are going southeast, but the bulk of the banding stations are southeast of us. So the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory started a project this fall looking at tracking them using the Modus wildlife tracking system. So we attach tags to the owls, the tags ping, and stations across North America pick up that ping, decode the serial number, and tell us where the owls have gone. We also have our own tower to keep track of any birds that are going by the south end of Beaver Hill Lake. And this is the early results of this year's project. So far, none of the owls have gone far east as we expected. One went to eastern Montana, but the rest of them have gone south into Montana and Idaho. So this is not what we expected, but it does fit with the fact that there's very few bird banding stations to the south, and may indicate that really more of our owls go south than we realized before. But we also know from the Christmas bird count, many stay for the winter. And in the winter, of course, that's probably what some of us that are skiers say, bring it on, we're ready for it. I think just a little side note on Christmas bird, or sorry, with the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory, we do banding events in September and October if you want to see owls up close. And if you're involved in schools or youth groups, we also do talks, and we bring a live owl or a live hawk into the classroom, talk about them, talk about topics related to the curriculum. So since I'm chairing the Beaver Hill Bird Observatory, I have to promote and thank the sponsors of the Bird Observatory, and thank you for listening and for your interest. And that's it.
Great, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I think we are going to turn the chat back on. There was a bit of a mistake in turning that off. We're going to keep it on so people can put their questions into the chat as we continue through these talks. But we're going to hold questions until the end. So thank you so much, Jeff. Next, we're moving on to Robert Dick. For 45 years, Robert has shared his passion and interest in night skies through public education and post-secondary courses. This experience led him to be invited by the Canadian Space Agency to be the astronomy instructor for the Canadian astronauts. Robert is the founder and CEO of the Canadian Scotobiology Group, Incorporated, which raises awareness of the impact of artificial light at night on wildlife and human health. Their findings have been summarized in the Canadian Guidelines for Outdoor Lighting and the book The World at Night. This lighting protocol was adopted by Parks Canada and the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada in 2008 as the governing requirement for their national designation of dark sky preserves, as well as by the International Dark Sky Association in 2012 for their worldwide Dark Sky Places program. It's also used as a basis for the U.S. National Park Service lighting guidelines and by the IUCN Dark Sky Advisory Group. To further save the night environment from artificial light, Robert developed the only current light fixture with low ecological impact, which hopefully he will tell us about. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, Robert.
Thank you very much. And I'll get my slides up here if I can. I think this is it. See if it's going to work. Share. And is everything working?
Yeah, we see it perfectly.
Okay, good. Thanks you very much for inviting me to talk. Some of us were seeing the pictures of the coal mines. Of course, we've heard of birds being carried down to the coal mines because they're more sensitive to the toxic gases than humans. So when they have problems, the miners know they have to get out of there. Well, when it comes to the night sky, astronomers are kind of like the canaries in the coal mine, because any bit of artificial light will inhibit our view of the sky and actually corrupt the data that we might gather from a telescope. And this has been known for well over a century because major observatories in the late 1800s began to be located far away from urban areas, and they continued to do so. New technology changes that because now amateur astronomers can spend money and buy filters and actually observe a lot of these objects really from their laneways in the middle of the city. But that's that's a high-tech solution to really a low-tech problem, that is light pollution. To put this in context, what I'd like to do is show you Edmonton. And here's a picture of Edmonton as of last year. And you can see, and so
actually,
red,
Robert, your slides aren't advancing.
oh dear, we run into that problem, eh? Okay, let's see. Let's stop share and I'll start again.
Now you do have the picture of, okay.
I'm going to share. So which one do I share? It should be this one. Hope we don't have to do this all the time. There's that one. And now we go full screen. Where's full screen? Down here. Let's hope we don't run into the same problem all over again like we had before. So here's a picture of Edmonton. If we run into problems, then we'll just do it the hard way, go back and forth. But the red areas are very bright. And of course, where you don't see any color coding on top of the landscape, that's quite dark. And what this shows is really light is a human problem or a human attribute. Wherever humans go, they carry light with them. And you can see they easily delineate small towns, hamlets, even individual farms and residences in the country. And since these companies and individuals, they tend to build their houses, build their properties along communication routes, they very nicely delineate a lot of the highways that radiate out from the city. What is interesting about some of this is that a single unshielded farm light or pasture light on a barn or so can literally show up on this map from orbit. And one of those lights can go, if they're not shielded, can contaminate about 1 to 2 kilometer radius circle around it. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a short while. You can see that the light pollution from a city literally contaminates out in the order of a radius of about 100 kilometers, and with the surrounding properties, surrounding towns and villages, perhaps 200 kilometers from an urban center. So it's not, and all this light is shining up into the sky. It's not necessarily shining down on the ground where you want it. So these images show the waste of light, not the useful light. Now let's see if I can advance it. Anybody see that new slide? Sounds of silence. I guess
We're still on the Edmonton slide. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, it looks like we're going to do this slowly, I'm afraid. So sad, but anyway.
Is it worth pausing, Elise, and talking Robert through it?
Sure. Robert, I think when we had practiced earlier, I think you just need to
extensive. Since we see that light affects the landscape quite a bit, the real origins of that is both social and cultural. And here in this slide, we see two extremes, I suppose. One is very large city of Toronto, and the one in the lower right is a hamlet of about 6 houses in the rural areas in Eastern Ontario. And if only we could keep that light from the city inside its boundary, we could probably accept the impact. It's very expensive, a lot of energy is wasted, but when you have these small communities in the country being illuminating the countryside out to several kilometers, up to 10 kilometers away, you can see the sky glow from it. You really can't escape it. In fact, I was on a radio call-in program actually in Edmonton about 20 years ago. And one of the callers said, well, don't expect to see the stars from the city. You got to go into the country. Well, actually, from the previous slide and this one, even when you're in the country, you have to put shades on because the lights from houses and businesses shine right into your telescope, right into your bedroom, and so on. You just really can't get away from it. And an unshielded light, as I mentioned, can shine out to be brighter than Venus over 2 to 3 kilometers. And that'll cast shadows. So fortunately, though, this is primarily a behavior of our species, it's not because of it's a behavior of our species, and it depends upon the social norms that we have. What do we expect? What do our neighbors expect? And a lot of this behavior is easily learned, and it can be unlearned as well. Now, there's peer pressure and laws. They impose some of this, effectively impose some of these, the lighting requirements, laws through legislation. Peer pressure, well, really, if you look at some YouTube channels, you can be excited about a particular finding or a particular attitude that's dramatically displayed on the internet or on the news or in a commercial somewhere. But still, these actions, they are only behaviors, and we can easily change the behaviors, as we found throughout our society. When you have news reports, or even when it comes to medical findings and so on, we change the way we behave. We eat differently than we did 50 years ago. So there can be an evolution in our behavior based upon education and also the technology available. Lighting, outdoor lighting has been around for about 150 years. But the spectrum of that lighting is typically being very similar to the sun, just a lot dimmer, for about 75 of those years. Then over in the 1950s, we started having the high pressure sodium lights, not the high pressure sodium, but the gas discharge lights. And then more recently now, they've been replaced by light emitting diodes. And with each of these transitions, there have been great, people have been saying how much energy you're going to save, because each subsequent technology requires very little energy. Unfortunately, what that means is that they consume very little energy, but that means for the same amount of energy and cost, you can put up 3 to 4 times more light, and that's what they've done. Now let's see if we can go to the next one. Probably not, but let's see. I guess you can't see this slide, right? I guess not.
It is
Okay.
not, it's not changing.
Let's quickly go in and do this way. And we're going to go. Oops, come on. I'll probably get much more eloquent at this. Okay, share. And we go to here again.
All right, it worked.
Okay, sort of. So there are 2 effects to nocturnal light, and that is behavior and biology. And these, I use these words carefully because they're very, very different. Behavior is perception driven, which means we can learn. It's a cognitive function. We can learn, we can change what we learn, we can spin in a dime, we can watch a commercial that says, buy this type of TV, not that type of TV, and we'll go out that same day and change what we normally do. However, biology isn't like that, where biology is based upon our genes, our genetic predisposition. We're literally hardwired to behave and to act in a certain way. And the mechanism for doing that, the machines that do that to maintain our body's health, are the hormones. So even though humans are relatively intelligent, or so we think, humans understand what artificial light is, but the animals don't. they just see light. Whereas we can see, that's our neighbor's outdoor light. The animals don't see it that way. Our mind understands what artificial light is, so we can change our behavior in response to that. However, our biology does not understand it. Light is light. In fact, the most influential color of light on our bodies is blue light. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a little later. Now, let's see if I can have to go out again and come back in again. Here we go. Stop share. Advance the slide. And share again. It's a little lame, but it seems to work. Okay, here we go.
Got that down pat now.
Sort of. So light impacts our behavior, it impacts our biology, as we'll find out. It also impacts the ecology. What is not known to most people is that we are actually very much a minority. In fact, there's only about 8 billion humans on this planet at this time, but there's far more other species, other life forms are roaming the earth and flying above it. 60% of all life is nocturnal, so we are actually a minority. And what they do at night, they forage, they mate, they migrate, and so on. But they need the night to do that. The darkness provides anonymity to avoid predators. They use the night sky for navigation. They use local terrain, yes, and they use the stars. And when there's no stars, they can, at least some birds can use the magnetic field of the earth to do so. Some animals also use the polarization of sunlight. So you can actually see roughly where the sun is if you can detect the polarization of light. But if you change the environment, we're also changing the cues and the drivers for their behavior and their biology. Remember, they don't understand it's artificial light. When they see a light, they assume that's a natural light. So when they see, for example, a light on the horizon, they know that the stars rise in the east and set in the west. They don't know why, but it doesn't really matter. So when they see a light on the horizon, they expect that light to be moving across the sky throughout the evening. So in the morning, before twilight, they see what the light is, they figure it's moved, then they try to get back to their burrow and they get lost. And that means they'll be out during twilight and they're subject to predation. Now, here we go again. I apologize for this.
No problems at all. We can look at the dark sky behind you. You
That's
switch-
always nice. So here's an example of rural lighting. Now, this is where it gets, I found it, I didn't find it amusing. I found it very insightful that this caller into the radio station would say, go into the country to see the dark sky. This is what you see. In fact, this is where I see halfway between Ottawa and Kingston. Now, here we have on the upper left-hand corner, this is someone who comes in for 2 weeks every year and go to their cottage. And for the remaining 52 weeks, he leaves 2 street lights on, pointed out horizontally in front of and behind his cottage. And they're on all the time, day and night. And they look like, to my eye, probably about 70-watt high-pressure sodium lamps. Well, in the upper right-hand corner is if they've got competition. This cottage is on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is a marina. And to their credit, this is I think this was taken in the late fall, and as a result of that, they're putting the boats to bed, and so they needed the lights on to be able to see them because of the short days as the autumn moves on. However, there wasn't anybody that this is actually taken at 3 in the morning, so really no work was being done, but they leave the lights on anyway. And this is a place that's about 10 kilometers away from the provincial park. On the lower left-hand corner, you see another example of cottages along a shoreline. They put on their lights and they shine across the lake. They can literally shine for 5 kilometers down the lake and still cast shadows on people's houses. Now, as an amateur astronomer, I kind of like I kind of like it when there's a bit of cloud around because the cloud traps the light down closer to the ground, freeing the sky of the sky glow. And that's shown in the bottom center. However, some cases in this right-hand picture was taken from a provincial park, and this is just a relatively small town of about 5,000 people, and that's the sky glow you get from that. And that light is so bright that it was brighter than the full moon. And yet, unlike the full moon, which comes and goes every month, there's about one week of bright night sky with the moon every month. These lights were on all the time, 365 days a year. The only time when the light changes a bit is when there's more or less cloud. Some clouds are high, some clouds are low. So you really can't escape it, even when you're 100, 200 kilometers away from an urban area. Okay, I'll try to get up to this again. I wonder if I need to. I'm not
It
sure if
advanced. It
that
worked.
worked.
Yes,
Oh, excellent. Now I know how to do it a little faster.
right.
So what was interesting when I was talking to you last week was that there's a program where you can have cameras out in the wilderness. Well, the Tropical Ecology Assessment and Monitoring Network is an international organization that put these cameras up in tropical areas. And this particular data set I got was from Panama. And I met the people in the World Park Congress in 2014, and they gave me access to their data. And what I was able to do is to plot their data, extrapolate the information from the headers of every single image, and then sort it and then plot it. And what I come up with is some insights shown on the graph on the graph that I have here. Now, admittedly, there's a lot of variety here because you're only dealing with maybe 5,000 or 10,000 observations, and I've only selected some of the species. One are foraging animals, the yellow, and the red are the carnivores, the predators. And what is interesting is that you can see a slight phase shift between the mobility of the carnivores and the mobility of the foraging animals. The foraging animals shun the light. They try to keep in the dark as best they can because of the anonymity that affords. However, predators tend to require some light at least to be able to see well because they're actually out hunting. They're not trying to avoid animals. So what we see is there's a slight phase shift. The predators want to be around full moon, or at least there has to be a moon in the sky for them to hunt more easily. And the foraging animals recognize this. They're not that stupid. They do learn. And as a result, they try to avoid the light. Now, of course, there's some variability because the predators, if they go for a while without food, they will start hunting whatever they can. That can be actually in the cold part of the dark part of the month. But generally speaking, they may do their main hunting around full moon, first or last quarter. And the rodents or the foraging animals, they try to avoid that. And that's generally the same for a number of other locations where they have cameras around the world. So it's interesting that something that makes sense once you've seen it is not necessarily well known to a lot of people. Because you can have farmers that will actually put up lights to drive away the predators. And what that does is actually attracts them. Because it's easier for them to see and easier for them to hunt. And we do this, and it's up and running, right? I hope.
It is, yes.
Okay. Another aspect that's not recognized by many people, mainly because people actually don't look at aquatic life very much unless you're, I suppose, a fisherman. But the zooplankton in the water, that's kind of like, they're kind of like the mosquito, the insects of the water, and they also don't like being preyed upon, so they try to avoid the predators, and the predators tend to be the larger fish. And the larger fish, when they hunt, most of them have to see, so they hunt during the daytime, and for that, during daytime, the zooplankton, they tend to go deep. So as a result of that, if you see down here, during the daytime, they actually go down deep. In this case, in this data, about 100 meters in the marine environment. Then when sunrise, when nighttime occurs, then they rise up and they fill the water column and feed off the floating vegetation and other things that might be there. When sun starts to kiss the sky, then they end up going deep again. However, now if you have shoreline lighting, then that will scare away the blue zooplankton so they don't come near the shore. And when that happens, the life forms that they normally feed upon start to accumulate. And I don't know if this is going to show up. Can you see that slide? Maybe not.
We do see the slide. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You got the stuff on the right-hand side now?
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, excellent. Good. I've done something right here. So here's an example where somebody decided to produce I guess a walkway along the shoreline, and they put in some chairs and seats to attract people to sit and enjoy the vista. Well, that works reasonably well in the daytime. However, then they figured, well, let's have people show up at night, and if we're going to have people show up at night, we have to have lights. So they added the lights. And what we noticed with the lights is that they attracted the mosquitoes. So people actually don't come here at night at all, even though they put the lights on. Each one of these lights is about $1,000 to $1,500 per installation. So they paid a lot of money for these lights. So nobody wants to tell them to take them away. But what the light does is that, well, plants like light, and sure enough, with those lights, we now have these algae bloom and vegetation blooms right by the lights against the shoreline. And that itself maybe isn't that bad. However, it fouls propellers of the boats. And also the plants eventually do die and decay. And as they decay, they release their toxins into the water column. And they also add a bit of an aroma to the shoreline as well as they rot away. So it was all in good intention, but they went on what it looks like, not the functionality of what it is they're dealing with. And you can take a picture of the lights as I've done in the upper right-hand corner, and you can just see the flies milling around. Some of them are mosquitoes, a lot of them are moths and other flies and so on. But they just, when you're down on the light, they see the light reflecting off you, and then they come down to visit you. And it's a very unpleasant place to be in the nighttime. You see this slide? New slide? Nope.
It hasn't
not.
changed. We still see aquatic life.
Okay, stop share. And I'm going to do this again. Back up. I don't know what I did. I think I understand. It was all the same slide before. So we're going to share, 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 and we're going to go full screen now. So there's also an impact on birds. Now, birds use the stars to navigate, and this has been shown by putting bird cages in under a planetarium dome, turning the star dome around to the projector around to imply different directions. And the birds, when they try to take off from their platform, they would tend to respond to where the stars are in the sky. When it was cloudy, then there was a much fuzzier trajectory, but that's when they figured it was trying to detect the magnetic field of the Earth. Well, when you have most animals don't go someplace where they can't see. So you're going to have, if you have a roadway, especially a lit roadway, down crossing a foraging ground, the animals will come up to the side of the road and wait until they can see what's beyond the road. And if you have street lights, they can't see. So they're very hesitant to cross the road. And so they wait there, then over time,
Don't leave that door
wait too
open.
long, then they'll end up being subject
Yeah.
to predation.
Some of that frozen yogurt.
Sorry, I think
Vanilla
somebody's unmuted. Could everyone please make sure you're muted?
I like some frozen yogurt. So,
Thank you.
so that's a result of that. Light has can really hurt the behavior of animals because they're doing what they think is right, and the artificial light is affecting them in a way that we wouldn't have expected. Here's an example of a light teepee with searchlight shining up into the sky, and the light will attract the moths and insects. The birds that are in migration then see this food supply, and they fly into these lights and start eating the bugs. Well, once the birds are inside the beams of light, their night vision is blasted because of the intense light. And so when they look out of the beams, they see complete blackness, and they don't want to go there because they don't know where they're going. And as a result, they tend to stay within the beams, and they fly around these beams until they finally get exhausted and literally fall out of the beam. Then after a number of minutes or so, their eyes eventually recover, but by that time they've hit the ground. So artificial light at night disrupts their migration pattern by distracting the birds and then blinding them. So there are other ways of doing it. For example, another problem associated with that, as alluded to earlier, where the birds fly into buildings. The buildings at night, when you consider the environment the bird has flying through a forest, the light areas are the clear flight path through the branches. Whereas when you're inside a city, the light areas tend to be the reflections off windows. So they fly literally target the windows that are reflecting light or the bright sky. And that's why they hit the windows. One way to help them is by putting a visual texture on the glass, as pointed out earlier. The architects are starting to think about that. They're aware that through the birders that they have to do something. However, they're still learning how to do it. And in this particular case, a building in downtown Toronto, they put these big blotches, which I suppose to one eye, I suppose, is obvious, but a bird that's in the order of about a 6-inch wingspan, 15-centimeter wingspan, they're looking for a gap that's 15 centimeters or more. And if they see that gap, they'll actually try to fly through it. And that's why the spacing of these visual textures on glass should be in the order of 10 centimeters, 4 inches or so, because the bird knows that I'm not going to make it, and they veer away. But at least it's starting to occur. And Toronto, I think, has a guideline for how you make buildings bird friendly. Another curious thing that most people haven't noticed, and that is a study highlighted it here. They did a study in 1929 and in 2000, repeated it in 2003. And in 1929, they found that the birds tend to start doing the bird song about twilight or so. Well, in 2003, they started doing that an hour earlier because the sky glow made it look like a dawn. So they started to birdsong and move about looking for food an hour too soon. And that just wastes their time as they're trying to find foodstuffs that may not even be there. And that just stresses them, and eventually, it stresses them, and the strong survive and many do not. Can you see this new slide? I guess not.
Not the new one yet.
Stop share. Okay, I'll do it.
Someone has noted in the chat as well that if you click on slideshow up at the top left and then play from the current slide, it will go to full screen, and then you can advance with the right arrow on your keyboard.
Use which one again?
Slideshow up at the top left.
Yep.
And play from the current slide. It will go to full screen, and then you can advance with your right arrow on your keyboard.
I'm afraid mine doesn't, maybe it's view show. This is a very old program. Oops.
Okay.
Oh, I know, maybe I'll try it. Maybe I'll take the lead. Just a moment. I'll zoom through all this. Can you see this slide?
I don't think you're sharing your screen right now.
Okay, I can fix that then. Now we see this slide. We'll just see if it works. Okay, impact on plants. The effect of light on plants have been known for over 100 years. And the picture I have on the left-hand side is a image from one of those papers. And it shows the different growth phases of a plant. Plants, they grow the stalk during the daytime because it grows up towards the sun. But because of the limited energy that the plant has, it defers leafing out until the nighttime. So if you have artificial light at night or even dim light at night, then what will happen is that the plant will grow towards the light source, grow towards the sun, but it will inhibit the growth of the leaves because the leaves would want to have very low light to be able to grow. And as you increase the amount of light, you get less and less leaves, so the plant gets tall and skinny. And on the picture on the right-hand side, which kind of surprised me because I didn't think it would be this obvious, but here you have a tree with leaves right next to a light. The light is illuminating the lower part of the tree, and as a result of that, normally the tree dries out the leaves and then gets rid of the leaves as the nights get longer and longer and longer. Well, by having a light right next door to them, it perpetually thinks it's summertime, so it retains its leaves. And of course, what happens then is that the leaves are a way to give off moisture for transpiration, and the tree literally gets weakened and will eventually either eventually dies, or at least is not very, becomes rather sickly. You see the behaviors slide.
Not yet.
Okay, let's go back to this. We can do this. Okay, now I go back to share. Share, and I want to go up to here.
Yep, we see it.
So here's an example of behaviors. We set up lights because we want to. We don't have to. In fact, humans we are diurnal creatures. We live primarily for the daytime, and our eyes have evolved tremendously to give us very, very good visual, to see very, very well and great color during the daytime. But we also have to have very good nighttime vision as well to avoid the saber-toothed tiger and so on, to avoid hazards that might be around us. But most people in the city will never make use of their night vision, regardless of how sensitive it is and how remarkable it is. What we do is we put up the lights because when we walk out from say, a brightly lit kitchen with your garbage to take your garbage out, you step outside, everything's pitch black, you stop suddenly, then you turn your light on and carry on. You don't give that extra 5 minutes or so to realize how sensitive your eyes really are. And we tend to have been indoctrinated into thinking that light makes things safe. And what it does is it puts you on display. For example, the upper right-hand corner, you feel safe standing underneath a street light, but really what you are is you're a target. You can't see what's in beyond the light of the street light, but you can't see into the shadows, but the people lurking in the shadows can see you just fine. So you're actually, if anything, you're less than safe. You're a target. When it comes to the lower left-hand corner, you've got, again, the light shining out over the waterway. If you're in a boat, you literally can't see, the glare is so strong that you can't see the floating deadheads and so on. So if you're zooming down the lake, we've actually had people plow into raw logs and destroy their engines, if not hurt themselves. Driving down a road, people put up lights right next by the end of their laneway, right next to the highway. And it turns out you can see their laneway fine, but a motorist can't see anything beyond that. You could have an animal crossing the road. You can't see it until, well, hopefully you're not going so fast that it's too late. But generally speaking, you find roadkill around these lights. And in the lower right-hand corner, you have the people that are inside a city. You need nighttime, you need darkness to be able to sleep well. And literally, it never gets dark in the city. It's always at least twilight, if not brighter. Another example that shows how somewhat ludicrous, or I guess not ludicrous, but ill-planned roadway lighting is, because roadway lighting is sized or made bright enough for rush hour traffic. And it's assumed that rush hour traffic is going to be in the nighttime. But most season, for more than half the year, rush hour traffic is actually in daylight. As you go in and out of the city, you probably experience where you're driving into the rising or the setting sun. The only time when you actually have rush hour at night, maybe in winter, depending upon your latitude, and in the late autumn and early spring. The other times of the year, you literally don't need to have rush hour traffic at all. In fact, if you look at the size of the amount of traffic that's on the road, we use the traffic as a proxy for human mobility or human activity at night. We see that less than about 6% of the population is actually active at night. So we're catering with the rush hour traffic, rush hour lighting to only 6% of the population. And one might argue that whether that's worthwhile or not. Some people, of course, say, well, if there's only one accident, that problem for that individual is worth putting up all that light. Well, I think there are other programs that would serve the population better than putting up such bright lighting, especially when you consider that a full-fledged system of urban lighting can cost between $50 and $100 million for a large city. For a small city, it's much less, but then even then, it's going to cost quite a few $1 million just to keep those lights on. Okay, go to the next slide. You got to stop share. Go to the next slide. And we can go to share again. And I can go to this guy up. So biology is something we cannot change. All the other things we can change by passing legislation or what have you, but other things we can't. And light affects primarily our vision. And in the upper right-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, we have the spectrum of the sun. It's sort of a continuous spectrum. But artificial light, our eyes don't quite see it that way. Daytime, we have very good visual acuity. We see lots of color, but the lights, the cells in our eye that give us those things, they require sunlight because after all, we're diurnal creatures. So they don't have to be very sensitive to light. Indeed, they're not. This is our photopic vision. At night, whether light is much, much less, we need a lot, very sensitive detectors to be able to see that, and that's our scotopic vision, hence the term scotobiology. And so they're much more sensitive to light, but also sensitive more towards the shorter wavelength. But if you look at that figure, you'll also see another intermediate curve labeled with a rather prosaic set of letters, IPRGC. And these are the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. We don't get pictures out of that. We don't get images, but that affects our biology. They're tuned to the blue part of the spectrum, so I call them twilight detectors because that's really what they do. They detect the twilight. If you have bright white light shining in your eye, these will tend to stop down your iris, so less light goes into your eye. Now, another aspect about our biology is that we are basically hunter-gatherers. So our genetic code is such that, it really reflects what we're doing tens of thousands of years ago. But we live now twice as long. We don't live 40 years like we did then. We live up to 80 years or more. So as a result of that, some of these age-related degradations to our body, we begin to feel. For those who are white hairs, will understand what I'm talking about. One of those things is incipient cataracts that begin to form in the center of your lens. When your iris stops down due to bright light, the light that enters your eye is going through that crystalline growth in your lens. And that scatters the light, reduces contrast. You don't see very well. What is much better is to shield the light so it doesn't shine into people's eyes. So your iris opens up and more of the light goes through the clear lens. So this is really a problem for senior citizens. Senior citizens should really demand shielded lighting that doesn't shine in their eyes because they'll see an awful lot better. Another problem has to do with a hormone called melatonin that many people have read about in the news and in a number of articles. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the warranty of our bodies expires at 40 years old. So as we get older and older, the amount of melatonin that flows in our blood gets less and less and less until it's not very much at all when you get up into your 70s and 80s. And the melatonin is when our twilight detectors detect the end of twilight, it releases the built-up melatonin that's in our glands and releases it into the blood. And the melatonin then enables the release of a suite of hormones that rejuvenate our bodies, fight infection, disease, and even affect our cognitive functions. If we don't have enough melatonin, then these hormones don't get released very effectively. And the result of that is a lot of age-related diseases and even social-related diseases such as obesity, diabetes, dementia, and so on. So as you get older, we really want to avoid exposing our eyes to blue light or bright light. Now, this has another impact because as we live older, we also are more subject to, we end up developing tumors and cancers. And it's been shown from this slide, if you have artificial light and even very dim light, then the tumor is enhanced and increases its development inside the rat that they're using here. And even when they apply tumor medication, it isn't responsive. If you have a dark night, then first of all, the tumor takes longer to develop. That's that black line. And when they give the tumor medication, it goes into remission. Now, to sort out why this is happening, they introduce melatonin to the patient, if you will. And what occurs is that then that makes things behave. It delays the development of the tumor as your body's fighting it. And also when the tumor medication is provided, then it goes into remission. So it appears that it's the detriment of the loss of the melatonin due to the dim light at night that's causing the enhancement in the tumor growth. And to put this in perspective, how much light will do that? Well, at 0.2 lux, which is about twice the brightness of the full moon, that reduces the melatonin in your blood by 60%. So a very small amount of light. And to put this further in perspective, a typical young kid can't read unless you have at least 1 lux. As you get older and older, it becomes closer to 2 or 3 lux, but still it's an order of magnitude less than what's we required to read. And that's enough to reduce the melatonin by 60% and affect the durability of the benefit of the hormones that we have that protect our health. Let's go to the next slide. Stop that. Bring this down.
Robert, I just want to make sure we have enough time for lengthy question and answers at the end too. Are there just one or two?
One more slide.
Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
just one more.
Great.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
No worries. This is fascinating.
And we bring this up, share again. We go share, and now we go to slideshow. So what's the difference between normal light, which really natural light, we've evolved to take advantage of and even revel in? Well, artificial light has 3 main differences. One is a spectrum. When we think of white light, we think the daylight is white and so on, but white light is actually a main problem. It's okay during the day, but at night it's not very good for us at all. Also, artificial light tends to be very bright, and that's because we're trying to illuminate a very large surface with a very small bulb of light. So that bulb has to be intensely bright to allow the diluted light on the ground to give us much visibility. And also, another part of our behavior is that we leave the light on all night long, whereas daylight is usually only on during daylight. And so in the bottom, we have a range of the spectrum from ultraviolet on the left to the infrared on the right. and all the colors associated with that. Now, looking at this slide, this part of the slide, LEDs are very, very different from sunlight. Sunlight is a smooth arc across the electromagnetic spectrum, whereas LEDs produce a pulse or a peak of light in the blue and then a broad band in the amber. When you mix the blue and the amber, you get white light. However, as the showing on the left-hand side, the biological impact occurs with that blue component. If we get rid of that blue component, and with phosphorus, technically we can convert all that blue into the amber light, we'll be able to see actually much better with almost no biological impact. Now, looking at the spectrum across the bottom of the screen, the mammals are affected by essentially the entire spectrum. Birds are primarily sensitive to the blue part of the spectrum. So if we don't want to bother the birds, we want to get rid of that blue peak. And when it comes to plants, plants are sensitive to roughly the blue and the red and far red. And we really want to get rid of at least the blue and limit the amount of red. So what that leaves in between is the amber light. And that's the type of light that we've developed that has very little biological impact. And some of the gray hairs may remember that you tend to, in the country at least, you put up amber bug lights to avoid attracting mosquitoes. So it makes sense to just use amber light at night. And when you use amber light that is at the appropriate brightness, it actually looks like candlelight, which is rather pleasant, I think. And some might even say romantic. So with that in mind, I think there's a good time to just stop share. And now we share again. I think this will work. I'm not sure. Do that. Share. And I'm done.
Great, thank you so much. That you covered so much ground, and I think we'll have some good questions for you from the viewers on all of those topics that you've covered. So thank you so much. At this point, we're going to take a little bit of a pause from speakers, and we're going to turn things over to Rocky Farrow and a live auction.
Are you seeing
Not seeing the screen. I think, Robert, maybe you need to stop sharing.
Right,
and then
I'll do that.
And then Rocky, I think I saw, there we go. We see your slides now. So
Okay,
you can take it away.
Let's just see if I can figure out how to start slideshow. Maybe if Elise could talk me through it. Can you see my cursor? Where do I
Yep.
need to go?
I can see it. Usually it should go under slideshow.
Okay, from start. All right. Thanks, Elise. Yeah, so welcome to the live auction. There's 2 lots up, 1 and 2. So this year, you all donated to be here due to an Eventbrite glitch. So we really wanted to be as inclusive as possible, but because of your generosity, we raised over $800 already. So I guess give your work to the busy man or make your ask of the generous person. We're still going to ask you to donate some more through this live auction. So if you would like an exceptional gift for yourself or someone you love, we've added even more value this year from last year. So please consider putting your bids in the chat. They say auctions are the one place where you can get something for nothing. That's an auction joke, but seriously, folks, place your bids in the chat. No nods are accepted here. Just enter your amount and your name. We're starting with a $100 bid. Christine, if you can let me know if there's any bids in there so I can kind of figure out the tempo of all this, it would be very helpful.
Okay, great. Maybe explain a little bit more, Rocky, on what people are bidding on.
Okay, well, they're bidding on more than 10 shovels worth of a tour through the native plant garden. You'll be able to tour, learn the names of plants, see the plants, and get at least a car full to take home, at least 10 shovels worth, plus lots of extra pots and seeds. In fact, if you could see my camera, I don't know if you can, you'd get a package like this of seeds as well. Actually, you couldn't see my camera because I had my camera off, but I'm going to turn it on just in case you can see my camera. You get some seeds like this. Let me introduce you to Dustin Bezier of Subscriber, because Dustin's going to sweeten the pot this year. Last year, we had $230 bid and $220 bid. And the winners said that we over-delivered. So Dustin, take it away. Tell us what you're going to add into sweeten
Sure.
the pot
Yeah.
this year.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Perfect. I've been loving the presentations, and so I'm really pleased to be here. Just for that. And I can vouch for some shovelfuls of Rocky's native plants, because I've been fortunate to be the recipient of that in the past, and have some beautiful additions in my own backyard here. But I'm also, as Rocky said, here to sweeten the pot a little bit. So I help coordinate a community called Subscriber, which is a group of backyard tree growers and kind of nature enthusiasts we're all working together to grow plants, primarily trees, and we donate a lot of those trees to school and community groups, specifically to parts of the city that are more prone to things like extreme temperatures, so the impacts of climate change. And so in addition to Rocky's native plants, I am going to donate a tree or a shrub of your choice from the Subscriber nursery in the spring. So if you win tonight, as soon as the ground is thawing in the spring, we will connect, and I can bring you down to the nursery and we can choose a plant for you. We have all kinds of things like historic Edmonton goji berries that were brought over by our early Chinese community. We have hollow ash horse chestnut seedlings, Capilano apricots. We have all kinds of hazelnuts and currants, different kinds of walnuts, all grown from local seeds. And so if something like that sounds interesting, we'll meet in the spring. We'll give you a little tour of the nursery, and we'll pick out a beautiful tree or shrub for you right before or right after you go and meet with Rocky and dig out a whole bunch of these beautiful native plants, which I'm sure your yard and garden or community patch will absolutely love.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. And I see that Aaron, I think it is, has put in $100 bid. So let's keep going from there. Who would like to bid against Aaron for more than 10 shovelfuls of native plants from Rocky's beautiful garden, plus a tree or shrub from Subscriber? Tammy's put in a bid for $120. Great.
All right, guys, let's get it up there. Bid before it's too late. Don't hesitate. You know, once you win this prize, you can come back all summer and just keep selecting plants, seeing when they bloom, see what's going to work in your yard. And again, previous winners have loaded up their car, gone away, come back again, loaded up their car, and we'll pot up some plants for you. I'll give you a list of what we've got, and I'll start potting them up in the spring and give you plenty of seeds. So you can really pretty much have a whole native meadow in one season.
All right. So Jenna has upped the bid to 130, and then Wendy has brought it up to 140. Corey
right.
is lamenting not having a backyard. But we've got $140 from Wendy.
All right, these make an excellent gift certificate to people. And, you know, we want to get back to our presenters. So 200 in there. And
can I add one more thing?
Yes.
I will just say, if you don't have a backyard and you still want a tree, and you want to make that donation to a school or a community group, we can help facilitate that.
Nice.
All right. I've lost my mic, but I'm still on, right?
Yep.
I can't see it, but luckily I'll be able to stop sharing. All right, 200, you put that in there and we can get back to our speakers. So Come on, the water's warm. Who will jump in? Be the envy of every monarch in town. Do you want a tree that lasts 100 years? Well, Dustin has such a bristlecone pine. So I'm going to shut this down soon. Let's get 200 in there. Going?
All right, awesome. 200 from Aaron.
All right, then. All right. So there's
200
two
from
lots
Wendy.
here. All right. All right. So we've got 200 from Wendy and
And
200.
200 from Aaron.
All right, then we're done here. Let's get back to our presenters. So,
Do we want to give anybody a last chance?
well, all right. If anybody
go-
wants to put 220 in there right now, we will give you going.
Yeah,
We will give you going. I'll call it 3 times here. Going, going, gone. Wendy
awesome.
and Aaron, thank you so incredibly much. Get in touch with me as soon as you want, and we'll line up. Let's give Wendy and Aaron a big hand for their unbridled generosity.
Yay, thank you so much. I got to be present last year when one of these trunkfuls of native plants, shovelfuls of native plants happened, and the person who took them home was so excited, so happy, and there were just so many plants. She was able to redo her entire yard. So thank you so much, Aaron and Wendy, and thank you so much, Rocky, for your generosity. It's amazing how your yard just keeps giving, and you keep giving from it. The more you give, the more your yard gives. Thank you so much, Rocky.
I think I stopped screen sharing. Am I good now?
I think you're good.
Okay.
So, we're now going to turn off the recording. Maybe that has happened already. And